Borderline personality disorder, complex PTSD. What in the world is the difference between these two disorders? If you've ever wondered that, this video is going to reveal 4 key features that separate the two disorders, so keep watching. For the best trauma recovery tips, tools, and strategies, be sure to subscribe by hitting that subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you'll never miss a video when I upload new content every Wednesday. Welcome back, everyone. I'm sophilialarkwoodbury, thehappymedium.com. If you're new here, I'm a licensed professional counselor, a trauma recovery coach, and a certified clinical trauma specialist, helping people and organizations resolve the effects of trauma and build resilience. Because borderline personality disorder often co-occurs with standard PTSD, many argue that complex PTSD is simply a fusion of these two disorders and not a distinct condition on its own. But despite these high rates of co-occurrence between borderline personality disorder and standard PTSD, there are some key clinical features of complex PTSD that actually separate it from borderline personality disorder. Now, if you missed my video on the difference between complex PTSD and standard PTSD, you can access it here in the cards, or you can click the link below in the description to gain access to that video. So how do you tell the difference between complex PTSD and borderline personality disorder? So let's speak in general before we dive into the actual specifics, because I think the general understanding will help you really begin to lay the foundation of how these disorders really differ from one another. Complex PTSD shares symptoms, primarily the same symptoms as standard PTSD. So the goal is to reform or to integrate the trauma memory that is keeping the person stuck, so that the person becomes an observer of the trauma as a past event, rather than being a constant participant in the past trauma as if it's still happening. So integrating that trauma means that the person acknowledges the trauma as part of an ongoing reality. So life is in reality moving forward, but it's no longer, the trauma part of it is not driving my current experience. So I'm now aware that I'm able to cope by rallying the support of other people. I have the resources and the tools to deal with my triggers when they come, whereas in the past I didn't have access to those things. So that's what it means to integrate the trauma memory. Now, in borderline personality disorder, the primary impairment is impulsivity and instability. So the goal is to reduce or to eliminate the impulsive behavior to make it less likely that the person will harm themselves. And so, as you can see, that these are two very different treatment paths, and misdiagnosis can be extremely harmful. So, we teach a person with complex PTSD how to integrate the trauma memory and how to reset their mood, and those very things can actually aggravate the symptoms of borderline personality disorder. Now, more specifically, borderline personality disorder does not require a traumatic stressor. There may not even be symptoms of PTSD in existence with the disorder. Whereas in complex PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, obviously requires a traumatic stressor, in addition to the other factors that you won't typically see in borderline personality disorder, especially if a person has not had significant trauma, is that the person with complex PTSD will have, over a prolonged period of time, at least in one phase of life, where they've endured a significant abusive interpersonal relationship over a long period of time. And so that is another way that you could tell the difference, is that complex post-traumatic stress disorder requires trauma, whereas borderline personality disorder doesn't necessarily require a traumatic stressor. Now, here are 4 features of borderline personality disorder that really distinguish it from complex PTSD. The first one is a sense of, or a fear of, abandonment, where this person may engage in frantic efforts to avoid the real or the imagined abandonment. So you may see things like self-harm behaviors like binge eating and excessive alcohol and drug abuse, or you may see things like self-injurious or suicidal gestures. You really can't cope with the fact that, or the sense that they're going to be alone, or they might end up being alone. In complex PTSD, you don't really see the fear of abandonment. You almost see the opposite, where the person is like, I don't care, you know, let them go, because they don't trust relationships, so they want to avoid relationships as much as possible. In borderline personality disorder, you'll also see unstable, intense relationships, where a person at one point could be idealized. So the person with borderline personality disorder could put this person on a pedestal. This is the best person in the world. Have you seen him? Have you seen her? They're the most beautiful person. They've got the most beautiful spirit. And then in the next breath, this person is the worst person they've ever met on planet Earth. And that can literally change within a minute, but a lot of times it's really, you know, one day and then the next day. One day they're the best person you've ever seen, the next day they're not. You also see an unstable sense of identity, where a person with borderline personality disorder don't really understand or know who they are. You know, so they may engage in behaviors that don't really align with who they say they are or how they feel. So they might say, you know, for instance, I'm a person who does this, that, or the other. And then you look around and you see, well, that's not really lining up. You know, whether they're having an emotional outburst, you know, say for instance, they said, I'm a really calm and happy person, you know, nothing could get me down. And then, you know, you see them a day or two later, or even in the next hour, and they're flipping off the handle, they're cussing people out. Are you really a person who is calm and happy? And these people really don't generally know that. So you usually see a lot of times these people will change their hair color, they'll change their clothes, the way they dress, it look completely different. They might change their name, I mean, which is pretty bizarre, but for them it's not. And so that's really important to note. You'll also see behavioral instability or impulsivity, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but then there are some other things that even when they're not really focused on a fear of abandonment, they may up and quit a job, or they may overspend, or they may they may do really impulsive things, you know, really make quick decisions, really hasty decisions, acting before they think. And so that is more typical for a person with borderline personality disorder when compared to a person struggling with complex PTSD. Another thing to note is that the high rate of suicidal gestures and self-harm behaviors in people with borderline personality disorder. People who struggle with borderline personality disorder report 50%, about 50% of the people report suicidal gestures or self-injurious behavior, as compared to only about 15 or 14% of people who struggle with complex PTSD. Now you know how to spot the differences between borderline personality disorder and complex PTSD. And you may be saying, okay, now what? Well, I've created a how to find the right treatment BPD checklist to help you navigate that journey. And you can find that checklist by clicking the link below in the description. If you're interested in joining us on Facebook, I've created a private group where I share the latest tips, tools, and strategies on how to resolve the effects of trauma and build resilience. You can click the link below to join. Okay, well, that will do it for today. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, and drop a comment to let me know what was helpful for you today. And last but not least, subscribe, hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell so that you'll never miss a video when I upload new content every Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.